Hello, welcome back everyone. I'm Dorothea Howard, the host of Let's Talk Sarcoidosis. Today in the studio, I have Karen Evans. And Karen Evans, she was diagnosed with lupus. So welcome to the studio, Karen. I'm really glad to have you today.
Thank you for having me.
I really appreciate it. And the reason that Karen is here today is because all of us know lupus and sarcoidosis are very similar in symptoms. And therefore, we wanted to talk about lupus to help educate people who have often been misdiagnosed with one or the other. So today, Karen, I wanted to ask you, when were you diagnosed with lupus?
Okay, I was diagnosed in 2002. And I was in the hospital for 2 weeks before they could really figure out what was going on. When I got to the hospital, I was really, really sick. I had been having headaches and I couldn't eat and I was a mess. And when I went to my doctor, she sent me immediately to the emergency room. And even in the emergency room, they were like, oh, well, they made a list of doctors that I needed to go see. And I was like, I can't even sit up. So there's no way I can be going to different doctors. So when they called my primary, they admitted me to the hospital. But it took them about a week and a half to even figure out what was wrong. They thought I might have leukemia, all kinds of stuff. But they finally diagnosed me with lupus nephritis, which is lupus that affects my kidneys.
Wow. So how were you diagnosed?
I was diagnosed because they just kept running tests on me. My blood pressure was sky high. So that's a symptom that something's going wrong with your kidneys. And they actually told me that I was really close to having a stroke and a heart attack. They had to give me blood. They gave me 3 pints of blood. And, mainly they were just maintaining me in the hospital, just trying to keep me alive until they figured out what was wrong.
So what was the process in them once you were diagnosed?
Okay.
Can you just kind of walk us through the process for the viewers?
So after I was diagnosed, I was in the hospital for 3 weeks. And once I left the hospital, I was really weak. I could barely walk like 3 feet without getting totally exhausted. It was a kind of fatigue that your whole body just feels heavy. And so I was diagnosed with lupus nephritis, and the diagnosis that they gave me, they decided that I needed to have chemotherapy. So I was on chemotherapy, the same type of chemo, Cytoxin, that is given for like breast cancer. It was a lower dose, but it still was chemo. And I did that for about a year. During that time, I was seeing a nephrologist who really didn't know that much about lupus. And so one of the things that I learned in that process is that you have to advocate for yourself and have someone with you, because I was so weak and sick that it was just hard for me to even, get into a real discussion with the doctor when I got there. And so once I got diagnosed, I started researching. I started going online and trying to find out information because I didn't know anything about lupus. I do have a cousin who has lupus, but other than that, I really didn't know what it was. And I was relieved that it wasn't leukemia, That's all I knew. I was glad it wasn't leukemia, so I have lupus, so let me find out what that meant. And what it meant was it was a chronic disease that I would have for the rest of my life, that they had no real cure. And so the Cytoxin was, every medication for lupus is for something else. There's no real medication for lupus. And so anyway, I did the Cytoxin, and after a year, the doctor said he wanted to keep me on it. And at that point, I was like, I've got to find something else. And so that's when I found a doctor, Dr. Michelle Petrie at Johns Hopkins, who is a rheumatologist who specializes in lupus. And she said that there's a drug called Cellcept that I could take that would, it's for people, actually it's for people who have had kidney transplants. And she suggested that I do that. When I went back to the nephrologist and told him that, he said, no, it's not approved by the FDA, and I don't think that you should do it. Well, there's no drug for lupus approved by the FDA. And so from then I started with Dr. Petrie, and I've been with her since probably 2004.
Okay. Now, I know I want to ask you about your symptoms, but I want to remind everyone that's watching, just if they're watching even for the first time, the similarities, because I have pulmonary sarcoidosis.
Okay.
And I was diagnosed with pulmonary sarcoidosis 33 years ago. So in 1984, I was diagnosed with sarcoidosis at the age of 26 years old. And my symptoms, because I want us to compare symptoms, because you know, they misdiagnosed this disease, and we want to have some clarity so people can have some facts, and at least when they go in, they can be their own advocate to say, well, hey, maybe I might have lupus, or maybe I might have sarcoidosis. But my symptoms, and after we talk about this, then I would love to know what your symptoms were. I had that annoying dry cough, which I thought maybe I had the flu. I had body aches, so another sign that I thought I had the flu. And I just got very fatigued. So I knew at 26 years old, red flag. Why am I so tired at 26? And I can barely walk upstairs without getting out of breath. So they were the major signs that I had in regards to knowing that something was wrong. But one of the things that actually prompted me to go to the doctors is because I had a drastic weight loss. And that was overnight. And it looked like I went from maybe having 120 pounds to look like I had 70 pounds. That's how much weight I dropped. So I knew something was terribly wrong then. So they were my main symptoms. And I had a skin rash, which also looked, I don't know, it's a purplish red raised skin rash, but it was on my chin. But when I think back, I believe I had sarcoidosis when I was 16, but clinically diagnosed when I was actually 26 years old. So now, with that being said, what about your symptoms?
Okay, well, I think fatigue must be a symptom of a lot of diseases. A lot of people that have autoimmune diseases say that they have that symptom. And fatigue, what I try to explain to people, it's not just being tired. It's being, your body is just drained, and sleep doesn't take care of the fatigue. Because people say, well, just lay down for a while. That doesn't take care of fatigue when you have basically an autoimmune disease. And I did have the fatigue, and I lost a lot of weight. I thought, I had been going to the gym. I wasn't trying to lose weight. I was going to the gym, but I wasn't trying to lose weight. I was just trying to be fit. But I lost a lot of weight, and my appetite, I couldn't, at one point, I could barely eat. But the headaches is what really sent me, because my blood pressure was up so high. But again, it's just so hard, and that was what they were telling me about lupus. it mimics so many other diseases that it's very, people say, well, isn't there a test for lupus? There is no one test. They have to look at the number of symptoms. I had the high fever, I had body aches, I had the fatigue, the headache, the high blood pressure. So for me, that's what the symptoms were. Now, other people with lupus, because lupus is a disease that will attack any of the systems in your body. I know people that have had pulmonary lupus. They've had it in their brain. I've known, because again, after researching, I became involved with the Lupus Foundation of America, and met a lot of friends who had lupus, and everybody was different. I never met anybody that had the same symptoms or the same medications. We all take prednisone at some point, which we try to cut back as much as possible because of the negative effects of prednisone. Plaquenil is another drug that a lot of lupus patients take. But other than that, it's just so, it's so difficult to determine the disease because it's so different in everyone.
And you're right, because my illness is the same way, often misdiagnosed because it mimics so many others, just like lupus.
Right.
They thought I had lymphoma, and I was praying that, Jesus, please don't let me have lymphoma. They thought I had tuberculosis.
Wow.
They thought it could have been lupus. They didn't know.
Right.
No one knew.
Right.
And that was the most frightening thing ever, and I'm pretty sure that was frightening for you. Now, what I wanted to know is, I know I was in a hospital about 5 days, and I know you said that you were in there longer. What was it like when you came home from the hospital? Because for me, I was terrified.
I was terrified too, because I was so weak and tired. And luckily, I'm married to a wonderful man who was very supportive, because I basically couldn't do anything. I just didn't have the energy to do anything. And I slept a lot. I laid on the couch, and I was depressed also, because I just didn't see, I didn't see the light at the end of the tunnel. And it seemed like once I started feeling a little bit better, I would have to go get the chemo, and that would set me back. And it got to the point where I would go to the cancer center and I'd be sick to my stomach before I even walked in, because psychologically, I just knew that that's what was going to happen. But, I had a very supportive family, but the thing is that once you start feeling better and you don't look sick, then people forget that you have this disease. And even though I may not look bad, I may not be able to get out of the bed the next day, or my joints are hurting. People look and they say, well, you don't look like you have anything. And I think that is it's good for us that we don't look bad,
right,
but we also are misunderstood. We're
I
often
agree.
misunderstood.
And one of the other things is, too, throughout my entire journey of living with sarcoidosis, I was fortunate to have doctors who really knew how to at least make me feel comfortable living with the disease. I'm not going to say that everybody knew everything. It wasn't a lot of information in 1984. So I was basically trying to look for information, and you might be lucky if you saw one page. So that terrified me, because I really didn't, have a lot. And I did meet a friend who is still my friend today, who also had, she was diagnosed around the same time I was, and you would have thought we won an award.
Right.
Because we jumped up and down like, oh my goodness, we know somebody that, that have this disease, because I thought I was the only one.
Yep.
Now, what was your experience like with physicians through your journey of lupus?
I think I was fortunate in the time that I was diagnosed, because as I said, my cousin was diagnosed. She was diagnosed in 1975.
Wow.
And the only thing they did was give her high doses of prednisone, and she has suffered so much since then. She's had knee replacements, hip replacements. Her hands are totally disformed, and has had operations on her hands. She's had a kidney transplant. When I was diagnosed, there was the internet. There was more information, because my doctor said if I had been diagnosed with the severity of the disease that I had at that time, I would have been dead in 6 months if I had been diagnosed around the same time that she was, because they just did not have the information that they have now. So I feel very blessed, although I too feel like I had it a long time ago. I had symptoms of, I think one thing, the biggest sign that I had one time, I was in Miami, and my sister and I, we are sun bunnies. We love the sun. We would go to the beach. We would lay out come out 10 o'clock in the morning, don't come out in until 4 or 5 o'clock. Well, I did that one time, and I got, it wasn't even, it was whelps. It was, the reaction that I had was so horrendous. I'm like, what in the world is wrong with me? And once it went away, I didn't pay attention to it. But that was the first sign of lupus for me, and I didn't pay attention to it. And now I can't, I hate it because I can't be out in the sun. I can't lay, and I've tried, but I always suffer. You know, I'll get rash, or it drains me. The sun will just take all my energy. So I love to garden. I have to go out early in the morning or go back out in the evening in the summertime. And when I am out in the sun, I have to have hats and cover, because I suffer. And I mean, that's one of the biggest problems for me, is not being able to be outside and enjoy the sun, because I love the beach.
And you know, it's just really, when you said that, it hit home for me, because I love the beach. And the same thing actually happened to me.
Is that right?
I was in, I want to say Savannah.
Okay.
And I was at Tybee Island Beach, Tybee Beach. And I remember specifically that when I was out in the sun, I noticed these red hives, and it almost looked like a little puzzle, pieces to a puzzle. And I said, what in the world is going on? And I had a reaction myself from my illness of being in the sun too long. And that, you know, for me, the sun is my joy.
Absolutely.
I love the beach. I love, you know, just being out there. But then medications, by me being on medications, and I know a lot of viewers are on medications, sometimes if you read the back of the medications,
you can't be out in
it
the
says
sun.
you can't be in prolonged
That's right.
sun conditions. So I'm pretty sure that's what happened to me, because I still take prednisone.
Okay.
And I take it daily, but I'm on 5 milligrams.
Yeah, me
But,
too.
you know, with the prednisone and then other medication,
Right.
then I think that just had a reaction from just being out there way too long.
Right.
But I should have had a hat on, because you
Right,
said
I know.
you had a hat on, and that's my weakness.
Right.
I always go out to the beach. I don't know why I have my sunglasses, but it's not enough.
Right.
I do wear sunscreen, but I need a hat.
Right.
And I know I need a wide brim
Right.
hat and not just a little cap.
Right.
But the question that I know everybody have, because a lot of people are not fortunate of having great friends and family. And I'm fortunate to have the great friends and family. So what about your friends and family? How much do they know about lupus?
I think a lot of people still don't know, because again, I don't always look, the signs aren't always there. And I've learned to say to people, I'm having a lupus day, or I'm being a loopy today, as we call ourselves, loopies. Because some days I just, you know, and it can happen anytime. Like I was like that last week. I just didn't have the energy. I have my kids and grandkids come to my house every Sunday for dinner, Last Sunday, I said, it's on y'all. You have to do it. You have to take care of it. I can't do it. And so they understand that. They understand that. But generally, I have to remind people, and I have to a lot of times just explain what it means. So, unfortunately, what people don't understand is it affects a lot of African American women. It's a black women's disease, and I truly believe that's one of the reasons why it has not gotten the attention that is warranted, and because also that people don't want to talk about it. Because I know with my work with the Lupus Foundation, we were trying to find prominent African Americans who had it so that we could come out and do like, you know, PSAs, and most of them would not. They would not. And I'm not just talking about actors, I'm talking about sometimes the actors' family members. So it wouldn't have really affected the person who was really famous. But, you know, and I think that's another cultural problem that black people have, that they don't want to talk about it. They don't want to talk about it. They don't want people to know. And knowledge, you know, if you can inform people, it's so much better for everybody. It's better for not only the patient, but for their families. So I really think that just coming out and talking about it makes a big difference.
And you know, that is really true, because that was one of the main reasons that I created the show, is for awareness and actually to help save lives. And the great thing about today's show is because of the similarities, and hoping that when viewers watch this, that they would have enough information from you and enough information from me that if they're experiencing any of these symptoms, or even additional, because you're right, everybody's different with symptoms, but at least in the back of their mind, they would say, well, maybe I have lupus, or maybe I do have sarcoidosis, or maybe I have both. Because there are people out here that have both, because you're right, lupus and sarcoidosis can affect any organ of your body. And so by us doing this, and especially by you speaking out, you can help maybe have somebody where their diagnosis is a little quicker because of this. So, you know, the thing is, sarcoidosis, it has lack of attention, lack of empathy, lack of awareness, lack of funds. What would you say about lupus, or why do you think that it's not as known as any other illnesses out here?
Again, because we don't always look sick, and people don't recognize it. But again, because it's also a lot of minorities and women that have the disease. I've been working with the Lupus Foundation of America just about ever since I was diagnosed. And they do a lot of research and a lot of advocacy. They go to Congress and they try to lobby, but it's just not on everybody's radar. And what people don't understand is people with diseases like sarcoidosis and lupus, we have it forever. And a lot of people that, like breast cancer, there are cures for breast cancer. There are more people that have lupus and sarcoidosis than have breast cancer. And people need to understand that. And the other thing I like to tell people is, whatever you're feeling, you need to go to the doctors and advocate for yourself. If you don't feel like they are telling you, you're not satisfied with what they're saying, go to another doctor. Because these are diseases that a lot of physicians do not know about. They aren't versed in it. And so you have to go where you just have to keep pushing until you get satisfaction from your medical community.
And as you talk to the viewers, Karen, what would you like them to know about lupus?
Okay, what I would like people to know is that it's an autoimmune disease that you don't cause. There's nothing that you've done in your life that causes you to have lupus. It's not a death sentence because there are ways that you can live a productive life. But you need to see a physician, a rheumatologist, or whoever, wherever it affects you, whatever a specialist. You need to keep contact. I go to the doctors every 3 months so that I'm checked. My meds are checked, and sometimes there has to be tweaked, but it's important that we maintain a healthy lifestyle, and that you stay in contact and get in support groups. The Lupus Foundation of America is a national organization. It's on the web, lupus.org, and you can find out support groups, information. You can ask questions and get a lot of information. The internet is wonderful.
Yes, it
It
is.
is really wonderful.
It is. And I'm glad. I was going to ask you about resources, but you just mentioned
Right.
what one of the resources were. You know, Karen, believe it or not, is the show.
Oh, wow.
I know. We have so much time to talk about
Right.
it. I just want to thank you over and over again for taking time out of your schedule to come here and tape with me to tell people about lupus, your experience, your journey, and symptoms, and hopefully helping someone that can be an advocate, because as we both say, advocacy is the best.
That's right.
It's the best medicine,
Right.
because you have to know your body and you have to know when to speak out.
Exactly.
So on that note, as I always say to everyone, thank you so much for watching. Please don't let your illness define who you are. Get out and live your life. Stay positive. Don't let this illness knock you down. If it does, we do have those days. Get back up. Thank you so much, and we hope that you enjoyed the show today, and see you next time. Blessings to all. Thanks, Karen.